Hello and welcome to an all-new episode of the Bitcoin News Show right here on the CryptoCast Network. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us yet again on another beautiful Sunday to talk about Bitcoin and crypto. We got a lot of stuff to go over, but before we do that, we are screen sharing our website here at CryptoCast.network, where you can find the YouTube channel, the iTunes link for the audio listeners, the RSS feed for the audio listeners, and of course, we got our Twitter and Instagram links up there, so you guys can check that out. We also are sharing some merchandise if you guys want to help support the channel, and of course, we are screen sharing our QR code, as this is a community supporter YouTube channel. So we really appreciate all your guys' donations out there. So if you want to support the channel, definitely check that out. And of course, we are going to talk about Tone Vays's Unconfiscatable Conference coming to Las Vegas, Nevada in just a few weeks, guys. It's almost here, January 24th through 26th. All the Bitcoiners are going to be there. Tone Vays, Jimmy Song, Safety and Max Kaiser, Peter Todd, Trace Mayer, all these guys, Giacomo. It's going to be a great Bitcoin not blockchain conference. There's a few tickets left. It looks like 11 tickets left at this particular price, 0.1 Bitcoin per ticket. And of course, with the price of Bitcoin down, it's becoming pretty cheap, guys. As you guys know, Bitcoin Tone does price all of his products and services in Bitcoin. So with that aside, let's go ahead and stop the screen sharing, get into your guys' quick bit section here. We got a few things to go over before we introduce our amazing panel as usual. So first, we got a new feature for Bitcoin's Lightning Network, guys. A new implementation has come out. It allows users to send funds instantly without the need to first create an invoice. So this is kind of pretty cool, because before you did need to create an invoice first before you sent a Lightning transaction. So this kind of really gets us closer to the precipice of streaming money. So I think that's really cool. It says the SEC has listed the cryptocurrency market as one of the 6 focus points of its compliance monitoring activities for 2019. So it looks like SEC is finally kind of maybe putting crypto in the forefront for their plans and their sites for 2019. Be interesting to see, if they could go after more and more ICO scams. We would all, of course, love that. And then Bitmain, oh, how the mighty have fallen, ladies and gentlemen. In an effort to continue its downsize, it's now putting the mega mining facility project in Texas on ice. So that is no longer going to happen. A lot of people were, sort of even getting scared about that. Bitmain opening up these huge mining firms all over the world, things like that. Not going to happen, guys. Not gonna happen as they downscale from their horrible investment mistakes, right? We got more Bitmain news here. Inside sources say that Bitmain now is also planning to name a replacement CEO. So there is now going to be no more Jihan. So we're gonna wait for that. It hasn't happened yet, but I'm of course looking quite forward to that, and to see Jihan and possibly the other co-founder there step down. So we're going to see what's going to happen, guys. That they've made a lot of mistakes. Then we got Shapeshift admits that the imposition of KYC has hurt the company financially. Who would have thought, guys? Come on, who would have thought? Adding KYC reduces business? Nah. So then we got physical Bitcoin futures. They are coming to Asia first in the February, I guess, guys. So this is going to be pretty cool. They're going to be going on the CoinFLEX platform. So this is the first physical Bitcoin futures market in Asia coming in February. So that's going to be pretty interesting. And of course, guys, as always, we have the links to all of these in links in our show notes. Then we got the cryptocurrency exchange. Kraken has revealed that it has received 3 times more law enforcement requests last year in 2018 compared to 2017, with, of course, the overwhelming majority coming from the US. This is really cool. I'm glad Kraken shared these statistics, because not a lot of exchanges are doing this. We need to know as a community, as an ecosystem, what the cost of this KYC and what the cost of doing this compliance is on the ecosystem itself. And this is a great window into that information, because otherwise we just don't know. There's a lot of times that gag orders go on and things like that. So thank you, Kraken, for that. That was really cool. Then we got the decentralized Bitcoin exchange. BISC has a brand new UI coming out, and of course they're trying to do a DAO. So check that out. I really enjoy the BISC exchange. I'm really glad that they exist. They've created a great, amazing protocol, and they are, of course, basically the only decentralized Bitcoin exchange out there that's functioning. So I really encourage everybody to check that out. And then Bitrefill channel. Oh, this is really cool, guys. Bitrefill launched this new feature. John Carvalho revealed it, and he'll be on the show next week. So definitely check out. He's going to talk more about it. But Bitrefill has created a new channel opening service called Thor that makes accepting Lightning payments really easy. It's really cool, because you don't actually have to have you don't actually even have to have any Bitcoin. The service will allow you to be able to opening up a channel for like a service, so you can pay as a service. So that's really cool. Make sure you check that out. We're going to talk more about that next week with John himself. And then finally, we got the world's first lightning book crowdfund continues, guys. I wanted to make sure everybody knows about this. You know, Renee over there doing the good work, trying to create this book, this lightning book, and he's trying to get it funded with Tallycoin. So really check that out. That was really great. And, you know, speaking of Tallycoin, they actually today, I think, just launched Lightning Network support for their service. So Tallycoin is really, really great. It's this crowdfunding or this sort of Kickstarter-like service for Bitcoin. And again, completely free. Check that out, guys. Really, really great. I got the links in the show notes. So with that aside, let us go ahead and introduce our special guests for today. Really excited to announce we got some new people on here. So we got some returning people. So let's go ahead and get them announced. We got Mr. Richard himself. Richard is Bitcoin Tina on Twitter, which of course is Bitcoin. There is no alternative. So Richard, how you doing today?
I'm well, thanks. How you doing, Forte?
Awesome, man. Glad to have you. I know you're a long time watcher, so really great to have you on the show for the first time.
I'm really excited to be here. Thank you so much.
You bet, you bet. And we got returning, of course, conspiracy theorist, Mr. Gabriel Devine himself. Gabriel, how you doing?
I'm doing fantastic, and I'm really, really glad to be back on the show. I got a better connection this time. It's going to go very smoothly, and I'm really excited to talk about all these subjects. And little pre-show convo was a tasty treat, so I can't wait to continue our subject matter there too.
Absolutely, man. Looking forward to it. We do always try to have a couple of, we usually have some interesting conversation, guys, before the show. Maybe one day I'll create a Patreon and start recording that. But we'll have to see. If you guys want a Patreon, let me know in the comments. We'll check it out. We'll do some additional features. And then we got returning. Actually, this is the first time on the Bitcoin News Show, but we have had him on the CryptoCast Network before, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Justin Moon. How you doing, Justin?
I'm good. I was just actually talking with, I run a little like book club, Bitcoin book club, and we just had Renee on to help us read the Lightning white paper. So my mind's kind of shattered right now, trying to work my way through that. And Renee's, I really hope his book does well. He was kind of studying us, trying to see what was confusing. So that went really well. And he's a great guy. So yeah, donate to that.
You bet, you bet. And I definitely shared the link to that in the chat before the show started. So maybe hopefully you got some more people to check that out. That was really cool. And again, guys, you know, check out his crowdfunding campaign. I have the link in the show notes. This is the world's first Lightning book, and Renee is a great guy. He's been putting out all these Lightning videos, and again, doing videos like with Justin here to try to get to the bottom more of understanding Lightning. Really, really great. And of course, Justin, I got to mention your awesome, amazing boot camp over there at buildbootcamp.com or Biddle. I have the link, but it's Biddle.
It's the worst word, man.
It's the worst word, dude.
I don't know why I did it. But.
It's okay. You can rename it later and then have it redirect. But yeah, biddlebootcamp.com, guys. Check that out. He's got a great Bitcoin course over there to teach you how to program with Bitcoin. So let's go ahead and get into our first topic, guys. There's a lot of stuff to go through here. So the first topic is kind of pretty interesting. It's been kind of exploding through the social media, through the news. We're going to talk about the yellow vests. You know, they're saying that the yellow vests in France now are trying to plan a bank run to collapse the euro. This is and the Clover Chronicle actually over there is reporting that the French banks actually are starting. Some of them are starting to begin to close and not allow withdrawals ahead of this sort of yellow vest pre-planned bank run. And you know, I wanted to know from what you guys are thinking of what's going to happen. So I want to see, is this a good idea? Is this a bad idea? Like, how is this going to affect Bitcoin? I want to get this from the panelists because we see that the fractional reserve over there is estimated up to like 30-1. So I mean, we see that only a couple million, if only a couple million people withdrew, we could see some serious damage. So let's go with Richard first on this. Richard, what are your thoughts on this? You know, how do you think this is going to affect Bitcoin at all? And do you think that this is actually going to, you know, affect the banks at all? Is this going to create any meaningful change? What are your thoughts? Oh, sorry, Richard, your sound is out. Got to adjust your sound. Maybe we'll go with see if you can fix it real quick.
Can you hear me?
Yep, I got you. Go ahead.
Sorry, my sound does that. What I think is most interesting is people are actually starting to think about things differently than they've thought about them before. So I'm really dubious that you can generate a bank run without real systemic fear. Bank runs are historically generated because people are fearful of an institution collapsing. So in 2008 and 9, in 2008, we saw.
Your audio went out again. Sorry, I guess until you fix that, let's just go with Gabriel real quick because I want to see what Gabriel thinks about this. I know that you've been thinking about this for a while, Gabriel. We'll go with Gabriel, and then we'll go back to Richard to see if we can get that fixed. Gabriel, go ahead. What are your thoughts on this? Is this going to really affect? You know, is this going to affect anything at all? Is this going to be good for Bitcoin? What do you think?
Well, I'm so bummed because I wanted to hear that. And I completely agree with Richard that generally bank runs have happened in the past, not for ideological reasons, but for self-preservation. People worried about the economic situation and trying to save themselves from what's going on. And I don't know what Richard was going to say next, but it's conceivable that we could be shifting into a bit of a different situation here, where the French are feeling so put upon by the authoritarian policies of the Macron regime. And there's quite a lot of rumbling online if you dig. As you know, I'm the resident conspiracy theorist. So you don't have to dig too deep to see the rumblings about falsified election results. And I was quite surprised to see Macron come out of nowhere with a brand new party and take the prime minister. Yes, people are looking for change, but I really don't think that the message that they were sending, which was a centrist pro-business platform, was going to really cause that much excitement among the French populace. So I think it's quite conceivable that the election results were fraudulent, and now we're seeing the result of that, which is widespread riots. Now, if that's the case, regardless, there's enough people that are upset with the status quo and the way that the EU is coming down for the regular people to protest a lot. Certainly the most in 51 years since we saw the '68 student riots in Paris, and it's spreading to other countries. This is a very serious thorn in the side of the elites there. I think they would much rather have what do I want to say? Leftist authoritarian pseudo-anarchists fighting conservatives in the streets rather than the populace fighting the police. That's generally not what the elite wants, because that means that the anger is directed towards them. So that's an interesting development where they're genuinely protesting the governance directly. And I think it's wonderful to see that there is even a meme out there of let's collapse the euro. We don't like the euro. Let's collapse the banking system. I don't believe that it will happen. I don't believe it will work. If that's what Richard was kind of intimating there, this is probably not going to actually quite function, or they're probably not going to be able to cause a cascade and really collapse the banking system with a voluntary bank run of this type. If that's what you were going to say, I agree with that. But this definitely, in my opinion, is a taste of things to come. I believe right now, this year, we're going to be seeing a lot of what do I want to call? What's the opposite of an echo? Intimations of things to come. And I think this is a meme that is starting, and it's going to grab hold of a lot of people. I don't think it's probably going to happen fully right now, but I think the idea of, oh, actually, we have all the power here, and we can seize back our power. The missing thing in the equation, of course, that's only a little bit. You see a little QR code here and there, or a little buy Bitcoin, painted on the back of a yellow vest or whatever. Until people actually have, until there's a rash of Lightning wallet downloads happening onto people's phones in, a place like France, and where people have a genuine alternative to be like, you know what, I'll just take Bitcoin now. Until they have something else to conduct their day-to-day digital transactions with, a bank run will be too inconvenient. There's too much online commerce that's going to be, that depends on bank functioning for a full run to happen. But I think this is a really important meme to grab its claws into the populace, into the minds of normies, into the minds of people who have problems with how governments treat their citizens, especially a place like France that is veering so precipitously authoritarian of late. So I think it's an extremely important social movement that is probably not going to have a very material effect to a big extent on the banking system. But if this meme pops up again in 15 months, watch out.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I don't like you said, Gabriel. There's probably not a whole lot of people that actually know about Bitcoin, right, in these yellow vests. But the meme is just so important to get across, so people can still understand and learn a little bit about what the heck is going on with their banking system. I mean, this is reminiscent of Greece, right, that we saw a few years back. And this all stems back from the president's decision to sort of raise the fuel tariffs in November, and it's sort of mushroomed into this. I mean, they really haven't even seen riots like this almost probably since the 60s. So I think this is going to be, I hope this turns out to be a huge socioeconomic, movement. But I don't think that they're going to, really do a real bank run and cause any actual economic problems. But I really hope that at least the meme gets out there. I really hope that this wakes people up, more and more. So let's hear what Richard has to say. He has switched his microphone. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Gabriel.
I'd like to correct something you said there, which is this media, this mainstream media attempted meme to blame the protests on the fuel tax increase. Maybe at most that was the spark, but the taxes are up hugely in France across the board since Macron took power. And anyways, the taxes were already the highest in the world, basically. And so that was just the straw. And this is like something that's been simmering and growing. And I don't think there's any chance of this movement being crushed like Occupy Wall Street was this time around. And they're realizing that. And I think, and Bitcoin is the secret ingredient, but all the people need to realize that, and it's going to take a little time.
Yep, it's going to take a little bit of time. And yeah, man, it was unfortunate how the Occupy movement was crushed so freaking viscerally in the US. I mean, they really went to every single big meetup that was happening and literally just dispersed them with freaking water. And it was pretty bad. So let's go with Richard here and see what you think. Richard, what are your thoughts on this? We've switched your microphone over to another Logitech microphone. Let's see if we can do better. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Can you hear me? Thank God. Okay. So here's what I take out of this. The fact that they're thinking about doing something like creating a bank run is actually a big deal. In current terms, they're woke. But if you look back to a time that was very meaningful in the civil rights era in the United States, what made the civil rights era work for Martin Luther King was not riots, wasn't even sit-ins, it was actually the boycotts. The economic hit that people took with the boycotts were significant. There's nothing more powerful than hitting people economically. So if they can make the connection, they're not going to be able to succeed in a bank run. I think that's a far-fetched idea. Bank runs are generated out of fear in financial systems where there is risk of collapse or banks that are at risk of collapse. Generating a phony bank run, it may happen, but I doubt it. But the idea that they want to try to do something that's effective, I think riots are actually particularly not effective because it doesn't get a useful response. But if people can be woke and woke to the idea that they should start with a small amount of Bitcoin, if you can get hundreds of thousands of people to put the equivalent of $100 each into Bitcoin, now they are actually engaging in a real protest. And this is a protest which has huge ramifications. So if they're woke to the idea that they can actually do something and they have a means that they understand that they can do something, if you can get a few people who can lead this idea and teach people what to do, that can be incredibly effective. And so from that perspective, I really like it. I doubt very much that they will succeed in causing any kind of a bank or system collapse.
Yep, and that's sort of, I think, what we agree with so far on the panel is that it's probably not going to cause a meaningful economic collapse. But again, this could be the start of something even bigger. And I'm really excited to see where this is going to go, because again, like you say, Richard, the only thing you can really vote with is your money, right? That's what you can definitely define, and that's what the only thing that sometimes government and corporations understand is when you speak with your money. And if everybody could just put a little bit of Bitcoin, I mean, it would be great. Max Kaiser's got this quote. He tweeted it out, I think today. He said, if every French person converted 20% of their bank deposits into Bitcoin, French banks and government would collapse and a lot of bloodshed could be avoided. But, I don't know if it would all collapse, but if everybody put a little bit into Bitcoin, then, you could definitely be able to hedge yourself against these crazy times that are happening. And I think, the prime minister has already actually announced that he's going to do even more horrible things to these protesters, right? He said like they're going to punish unsanctioned protests and ban protesters from wearing masks at rallies, and then allow police to search without reason the belongings of any attending any person attending a protest. So it's almost like the Occupy movement. He seems like they're going to start maybe smashing it further. So Justin, let's hear from you. What do you think about this? Do you think that this movement is going to get any bigger? Do you think that it's just going to get smashed? Do you think that this is going to affect Bitcoin at all?
Yeah, I like the Martin Luther King analogy with the boycotts, right, and the economic hit that was effective. And so, I think what, like, the way I interpret it is you're seeing people, they've sort of like identified some problems, and now they're sort of flailing away trying to address these problems, right? And so, first they take politics really seriously, and they they try to vote and influence other people to vote for the right person, and that fails. And so then they start getting more creative, and that's what I think about these bankruns is like, oh, that's actually like a really creative, out there solution. Like, you can tell these people, like, this is not the first thing they've tried, right? They're like, it's creative, and it's also like kind of desperate. They're getting desperate, and so. But like everyone else, I mean, I don't think you can manufacture a bank run. I think a bank run is like a panic. Like, a panic is something that is sort of organic, and it's hard to plant it. And so I think that it's not going to work, and they're going to keep looking for other options. And at the end of the day, Bitcoin adoption is in the mainstream is more about, it's not necessarily about choosing Bitcoin per se. It's all like and it is in some senses, but it is also about opting out of the traditional system. And so Bitcoin just stands there like it's like it always does, confirming blocks every 10 minutes, and has its arms wide open, and you can join, you can opt out whenever you choose. And so I think some of these, it wouldn't surprise me at all to see this whole thing get crushed, and then see some of the brighter people be like, okay, well, here's this option. I'm going to go install Pierre Rochard's node launcher and, get to business here. And so I mean, if you step back a little bit, I think it's, it's interesting to see, like, the last couple hundred years, we've had, like, group identities have started to play kind of a big role. It's like things used to be hyper local, right? And then you started to identify, with your family, and then with your town, and then like with your king or your province, and eventually the country. And the EU and the Euro is strange. It's like not even nationalism. It's like meta-nationalism. It's like, it's that you're from a continent, and somehow that is like a tie that binds. And so it's like, it's an extreme, like, short of world government, you can't get a larger group identification. And so I think that's kind of what you're seeing collapse here, is the like group identification of like pan-Europeanism, which is just like a kind of a ridiculous concept to begin with. And so I think that's good for Bitcoin, because what Bitcoin is about, at the end of the day, is about the individual, right? It's about tools for the individual, and it's extremely individualistic. And so if you don't have to outsource your security and stuff to the monetary policy to other people, it becomes a better world for individuals. So hopefully we keep swinging in that direction. I think that's what these protests represent.
Yeah, I also, at another level, almost really, you can sort of think of it as, we are sort of unifying against things like nationalism almost. I mean, we're sort of at least unifying against things like banks, and maybe possibly governments, because this is all about, the internet is all about, this generation, and Bitcoin is all about breaking down borders. It is all about unification, and not necessarily like New World Order, One World Order, but no, the people together are sort of rising up again. I like to say this phrase, this is like sort of like a national or sort of like a global financial renaissance. That is sort of the term I like to use, because it sort of describes what's exactly happening. Like, people all over the world are getting fed up with how the banks are being run, and they're sort of not going to stand for it anymore. And now, finally, for the first time, we do have this option. We do have this exit sign. We do have as you say, Justin, Bitcoin welcoming its arms. I like that phrase. It's always got its arms open. Almost. Oh, that's what you said. Arms open. It's always got its arms open, ready to receive anybody who wants to learn more about it.
Bitcoin's like Jesus when you think about it. It's just it's always that
Bitcoin Jesus. Yeah. All right, Lord. All right, Lord.
We don't really interesting. One thing that is really interesting, though, is that they did seize upon money as a thing. They're like, maybe it's money. Maybe that's where we can cripple this beast. And I think that's pretty interesting. because that's really close to Bitcoin adoption when you identify that as a problem. Because usually, you know, in the US here, that's not like, we're talking about immigration, we're talking about all these other things. They're actually hitting upon money, which is, it's interesting. I think they're closer to this class of people is very close to becoming, to adopting.
Absolutely. Let's do maybe one last round of input from you guys. Richard, if you want to close us out on this topic, any final things to say on this topic?
I think Justin just hit the nail on the head. That's exactly right. And when you start to put things together, and that's what I was also trying to say. And so I completely agree. When you start to put together that the real issue is money, the real issue is dishonest money, as I like to call it, and that the real issue is being able to exert your influence through your money, you are starting to move in the direction of understanding that Bitcoin is your answer. And that's really a big deal. And so Justin, I think, is exactly right in what he said. When you start to put these ideas together, they are moving along in a direction where there is kindling that's there. All you need is a spark. All you need, and yet you have everything in place. All the necessary ingredients are there for the fire. And we're very close to it. It's a really big deal. And that's where you see this awakening, and you see it around the world, and you see the anger. I argue that the real reason for the populism that we see, the underlying cause of this is dishonest money. And dishonest money is money that steals from you every day. So I ask people the following question. If you have a choice of 3 assets, you have a choice of cash, however you want to keep it, treasury bills, whatever, the S&P 500, and for lack of a better one, gold. And you can make a choice, and you have to hold it for the next 20 years. You can't spend it. You can't use it. You have to hold that position for 20 years. And I asked them, what would you pick? And the point is that nobody would pick cash. And why wouldn't they pick cash? Because they know with a certainty, there's no doubt that it will be worth less. It will have less buying power in 20 years. They don't know about the other two. They're not sure about it. They're certain that cash will have less buying power. So you don't pick cash. So you have money which you know is dishonest money. And that's money that robs you every day. And that's the fundamental problem. And that's the problem that in time Bitcoin will answer.
Yep, and that's what we have today is dishonest money and easy money, right? As Saifedean likes to say in his book, all this access to easy money, all this access to dishonest money, it's creating a fiat world. And that's something that I think finally the world is waking up to and we're fighting against. Gabriel, final thoughts on this topic?
Yeah, I'm going to go with a predictive angle on this topic. And my prediction is that unlike previous similar movements of the last couple decades, I think that the Gilets jaunes are not just harbingers, but actually the beginning of a worldwide social movement that is from the ground up, a grassroots movement. Now, there might be different names in different continents, different places, but I think that actually this is the snowball. We're already seeing the snowball, and I don't think it will like stop and start again. I think this is the snowball. And as Justin pointed out, they're very close to finding Bitcoin. I think that it's going to take a number of months, if not, like Richard was saying pre-show, 1 to 3 years. But once that snowball and the Bitcoin snowball join up, that will be the thing that crashes into the delicate chalet of the current world financial authoritarian fraud paradigm. So it's really fun to see this little thing tumbling down the hill. I think this is actually the one, to be honest.
Awesome, awesome. Let's hear from Justin. Final thoughts on this topic before we move on, Justin.
Nothing to add. Nothing to add.
Okay, we got to save time anyway. Justin's got to go.
The Berkshire Hathaway annual meetings. It's Buffett and this guy Munger, his partner. Buffett always says something really sophisticated, then Munger goes, "Nothing to add," and he eats candy. So I'm just going to do that. These guys are so good.
Nothing to add. All right, cool, cool. Of course, we love the proof of keys hat that Richard is wearing. Proof of keys, got to get that from Trace Mayer's site, proofofkeys.com. All right, cool. Let's go move on to the next topic. Before we do that, let's just make sure everybody knows that we are streaming here live on the CryptoCast Network, guys. We would really appreciate if you could please give us a thumbs up. If you guys like the show, like what you're seeing. If you guys are new here, then please hit the subscribe button. And for our audio listeners, we would very much appreciate a review over there on iTunes. And of course, we have lots of shows here on the CryptoCast Network. Network that are always coming. We have a brand new Bitcoin Matters that is ready to go for tomorrow. And of course, we have the Bitcoin News Show here live every Sunday at noon. So let's move on to the next topic. Russia plans to ditch the US dollar for Bitcoin, says university professor. It's pretty interesting because this is a university lecturer with ties, to the government. Basically, that says that they are going to, massively invest in Bitcoin as a way of sort of avoiding U.S. sanctions. So I want to, and he says it can happen in a matter of weeks. So I want to get thoughts from the panelists. Let's go with you first, Justin, on this. What do you think, Justin? Is this going to actually happen, or is this sort of really part of this whole Eastern Front of trying to create and move away from the dollar, right? We have this whole sort of thing that's been going on for a while now, years, maybe possibly decades, of sort of the East trying to, Russia and China trying to, create some kind of exit or some kind of alternative to the US dollar hegemony. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I'm not sort of in tune to all the geopolitics. It's a really complicated question, but if there's anybody who's ready to just put a big reckless middle finger up into the air against the petrodollar, it's Mr. Putin himself. Like he's the guy who would do it. So yeah, I mean, I'm still pretty skeptical about, like, I generally don't think Bitcoin's a very good currency yet. It sort of stinks. It's so volatile, right? Like, I mean, it's one of these funny things. It's like it'll become good when the price goes up another couple hundred times. It like, until that point, it's like running a little business that uses Bitcoin. It's like a pain in the ass. I get paid a bunch when the price is like 6,500 and then it goes by half. It's like, well, I gotta like sell coins at a low price. It's tough. And so I think now Bitcoin's more about speculation. And so I doubt anybody would adopt it unless they really need to, like maybe somebody like Venezuela who has no credibility. It's tough to see, but I think it's pretty interesting that we take this seriously. We do entertain this, and that says a lot. Like it could happen. I think it would probably be a bad move, but like, because like the dollar's still better in almost every way. But like, I think as the ramp continues, and when the inflation rate of Bitcoin goes from 4 to like, like we're pretty similar to the dollar now, and eventually it's going to just be like that. We haven't really crossed yet. The dollar's still better for most money uses than Bitcoin, but we're getting close. It's like, it's interesting that you can actually have this, like, maybe it would work. I don't know. Maybe it would. That's kind of my point of view.
Yeah, I'm really glad that we're just entertaining, this idea, right, at all, because this is insane. This is how serious we've come here. This is how seriously messed up, right, the U.S. dollar is. This is how seriously messed up these sanctions are. This is where, like, Russia is. And again, we've seen Russia be gobbling up gold here for years. Like, we've seen not just Russia, but Russia and China both just trying to, gobble up as much gold as they possibly can. And it really, I think, it says a lot that this is kind of hitting mainstream, that everybody's sort of even thinking about this and talking about this. Of course, this gets more information out about Bitcoin, more people curious about Bitcoin. But I mean, if this happens as soon as February, which the guy's saying, obviously that could have some huge effects on Bitcoin price. But it's really interesting just to see, because there needs to be some kind of give here with all of this crazy sanctions going on, and what the U.S. continues to do with the dollar as it continues to wield it as a weapon. There's going to be some pushback, and this, I think, is finally a recognition, maybe even by mainstream media, of that pushback. So let's go with Gabriel next on this. Gabriel, what do you think about this? Is this really a meaningful topic? Is this something that Russia could seriously entertain? And if it does happen, I mean, how quickly would we see the Bitcoin price go up?
It's a meaningful topic in general, and totally not a meaningful topic in specific. In other words, governments everywhere will have to buy Bitcoin and hold Bitcoin. Governments will be ever more like private institutions. I mean, that's been happening it's been going back and forth, this whole dream of a democracy being owned by the people. It was always a mirage, and it was always a scam, so to speak. But I think that going forward, it will be a lot more on the surface. It will be a lot more evident that something like the United States was really almost like, okay, hey, we've got this hegemony going on. Let's make our own system, right? Let's make our own. And it was kind of run somewhat like a corporation, where you had to be a landowner. In other words, you had to be like leasing land from the hegemony in order to have rights in the system, in order to be able to vote. So it's run very much like a business where you're like, oh, okay, you rent this plot of land for your farm from us, and then we'll protect you back. You know, it was like really a service oriented kind of thing, and it's become this sort of, you know, the 20th century sort of what they call liberal democratic system is like a new thing that gradually happened over many decades, but it was all marketing. You know, it didn't actually happen. It was just a way for people to steal more because the system was too fair kind of before, or too much skin in the game, right? And so they used this marketing to say, well, we're going to give the rights to the poor people and the little people, but actually they just stole more. So in that sense, the governments are going to have to cut back. They're going to have to be totally solvent. And so in order to do that, they're going to have to hold assets in money that other people will accept, and they're not going to be in control of the money supply. They'll have to actually have budgets that they stick to, and as such, they're going to have to hold the money of the day, which quite distinctly will be Bitcoin. But we're totally not there yet. This is a completely unsubstantiated rumor by some jackass professor guy who has Bitcoin and likes Bitcoin for all the right reasons, and he's trying to set up a surge or whatever. I mean, there's totally a chance that, you know, the central bank might, you know, buy a little Bitcoin or something just to hedge for fun, or you know, somebody over there be like, you know what, let's do it. Let's throw 10 million at it. You know what I mean? Or even, you know, more than that or whatever. But this is nonsense. You know what I mean? But in general, in the long term, any central bank or government, both, that wants to survive will have to have Bitcoin reserves, or they won't. They'll collapse.
Yep, interesting. And of course, we've seen histories. We've seen in history what happens to a government or a country that doesn't hold the money, the correct money of the day. Right? They just get completely destroyed. Their wealth gets completely wiped out. And so we want to make sure that, you know, people at least become a little bit educated about what the power of Bitcoin can do. Because remember, right, governments were originally created to enforce property rights. But if they're not holding the correct asset that the people are you know, using that property with, right, they're just going to roll right over. And so what I'm really waiting for is the first country to like publicly announce, right, that they're holding Bitcoin in their reserves, because that, of course, will really be the wake up call. That's sort of what we're waiting for. This is like this Russia article is like a prelude to that, right? So we're almost there, but this is a little bit of a stepping stone, I think. And so
I don't think so. I think that's later. I think that's later, Vortex. I think the people are going to cotton on. The gilets jaunes are going to cotton on to Bitcoin, and all the individuals and bureaucrats are going to be protecting themselves before the big institutions jump in. They'll be on the back of the curve and they won't benefit as much, and their power will decrease even less, unless there's some little ones, like you said, Venezuela or like Barbados, who's like, hey, we're looking at this, you know, there's some, or maybe Switzerland or some smart people somewhere, but most of them will be too late and they won't really benefit from the growth, other than everybody benefiting from the, you know, deflationary growth.
Sure. Yeah. And, you know, and to Justin's point, I don't think that, you know, that you have to think of Bitcoin as a currency, right, all the time. So, well, obviously, you know, it does sort of suck as a currency, as for all the reasons that Justin mentioned. But again, a lot of people aren't really thinking of it as a currency right now. And in fact, you can use it as a bit of a store of value, right? So we've seen Bitcoin, you know, price continue to go up and go up and go up over time. It does have these 80% crashes, but not before rising thousands of percent from the previous, you know, all-time high, or from the previous middle tier price. And so I think that over time, you know, it is going to take some time, but I think people will eventually wake up with these articles one after another coming out, and I hope that they just start coming out more frequently. That's what I'm really hoping for. But let's get Richard in here. Richard, what are your thoughts? You've been patiently waiting here. What are your thoughts on this topic? Is Russia really going to buy Bitcoin, or is this just a prelude to, you know, what's going to happen in the future?
I have a slightly different take than everybody. First of all, the dollar has been weaponized. The United States uses the dollar as a weapon. And I think that many countries hate using the dollar just for that reason. They fear its weaponization. Many US citizens have a hard time opening accounts all around the world because the dollar has been weaponized. Laws like FATCA and other laws make it difficult for US citizens to open accounts. I think that the interesting thing about Bitcoin is there's an opportunity, there's an asymmetrical opportunity to make an asymmetrical bet for countries that are not really in leadership positions today. The United States is far and away the biggest economy economically as a single country, particularly with financial power. For Russia, this opens up a very interesting opportunity for them if they have any insight whatsoever for a relatively small bet. And $10 billion is a really small bet for a country. They could wind up being in a situation where they have global financial leadership. So countries like Malta that are welcoming cryptocurrency and Bitcoin specifically, if they were to buy some cryptocurrency, if they were to buy Bitcoin in particular, then this opens up opportunities for countries like that that they wouldn't have thought possible. Now, I further have a take that I believe that the Chinese at some point will start to recognize they fear capital flight. And I think the Chinese will one day wake up to the idea that if their citizens buy Bitcoin, they don't need to engage in capital flight. Effectively, you have already engaged in capital flight when you buy Bitcoin. But if you live in your country and you spend your money there, capital hasn't really left anywhere. So if you keep your money in your country because you have it in Bitcoin, you don't have a problem with capital flight. The things that you worry about and being able to drive your economy aren't a problem. So when you start to wake up to the idea that buying Bitcoin means you actually don't have capital flight with your people because they want to keep their money with them in the country that they're in, then people start thinking very differently about all of this. So are the Russians there yet? I don't know. But I think it's a potentially interesting situation that they might be open to the idea. Whether or not it moves the price near term, some people have commented to me when I've discussed this with them, well, they could buy it in the OTC market and it wouldn't move the price. But once you start to dry up supply, and I think there are too many people who trade Bitcoin too wildly for stupid moves. They're looking for 10 and 20% moves, which I think is ridiculous. These are moves that we're talking about going up 50 times and 100 times, and ultimately, to my way of looking at the world, in thousands of times. And people probably think I'm crazy for thinking that, but this is what I think. I think you'll see an end, I think you'll see a terminal value on Bitcoin, which ranges between 400 trillion and $1 quadrillion. Dan Held made a comment about this, and I actually agree with him. And that's really just a giant repricing event. You're going to end up repricing everything in Bitcoin. And that's a long discussion, not a discussion you want to have right now. So I think it's actually quite interesting and quite possible. I don't know the inner workings of Russia, but I don't think it's so far-fetched because I think we have preconditions in place that this could be interesting to some countries. So I think it's actually quite possible. I guess we'll find out.
Yeah, it's interesting because we say these high prices for Bitcoin, and people they start wondering how can that be possible. But then you have to explain to them that look, in an era of hyper Bitcoinization, if that actually happens, right, you're going to see the dollar become worthless, and in that case, of course, everything is going to be priced with more and more dollars, right? It's really not that far fetched to think once you reach over a certain threshold, that Bitcoin can easily become many millions of dollars per coin, because what is the dollar worth then at that point? How much does a Happy Meal cost, right? If a Happy Meal freaking costs $100, then it's going to make sense that Bitcoin is going to be hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. So it's going to be funny to see, because again, we're just waiting for the first countries, right, to actually welcome Bitcoin, because whoever welcomes Bitcoin starts holding Bitcoin in those reserves, like the panel's been saying, the first countries to do that are going to be the global leaders in this century. They are going to be the global leaders in this century and the next, whoever actually starts investing in Bitcoin seriously now, because this, of course, is the money of the future. So Justin, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I got one little thing to add here that I think is pretty interesting. So, I think it's interesting to think about which countries would be the first to adopt. And one of the interesting things, I was just reading this book, Democracy, the God That Failed by Hans Hermann Hoppe. And one of the points he makes is that how a democracy makes decisions is with a very near-term horizon, right? Because terms only last a couple years, and you can get reelected, but you always have to be, you can't really do a really long-term decision. And Bitcoin is the ultimate long-term decision. It's like a 40, 50-year time horizon type of thing, if you do it correctly. And so when you think about who would be the ones to make that long-term decisions, it would not be a democratic leader. It would be a dictator like Putin, who views Russia as his personal property, right? And while that's kind of a little iffy in terms morality-wise, it does lend to very long-term thinking, because it literally is their property. They basically own it, and so I think they'll be the first ones to really embrace this because it requires that long-term decision making that is not possible in a democracy or anything but basically a dictatorship or a monarchy.
Yeah, interesting points. It's true. I mean, they're definitely thinking differently than the freaking U.S., which is of course divided on everything. So it makes sense that maybe somebody who's thinking about their self more, right, than everything would want to invest into Bitcoin, because again, Bitcoin is just beautiful. It's this feedback loop, right, of greed, and it's just great because everybody can benefit from this fact. Bitcoin, of course, as we talked about before, this game theory just works at the very primal levels of how human psyche works, of how human psychology works, and it plays really well into this feedback loop that allows everybody to fight for Bitcoin. And this is how it creates these white blood cells, right? This immune system. This is how it creates that, and we've only seen this grow. This was very, very interesting in the early days, but now we've just seen it just go continue to go exponential, and we've seen all of these groups and all of these people chime in to do all of this work. Things like Bitcoin Optech, just little groups of people creating projects that has now spun into this huge ecosystem that is this white blood cells, that is this immune system that will do whatever it takes to protect Bitcoin. So really great points, guys. Let's go ahead and move on to the next topic. We only got about 15-20 minutes left, so I know Justin has to run soon, so let's go ahead and get to the next topic and then go with Justin first on this one. But we got the final topic here. This kind of had a little bit of controversy. I wish Francis would have been here today. Francis couldn't make it today, but I wanted to have him comment a little bit on this too. But there was a little bit of controversy this weekend over over BTC Pay server. And essentially, what I want to talk about before we talk about that drama, I want to talk about this project, because this is really an amazing project. This is there's this gentleman named Mr. Cooks, right, an anonymous name, who has been working on BTC Pay server, has been contributing to BTC Pay server, and he created this amazing crowdfunding platform that is now built and baked into BTC Pay server itself. It allows you to raise funds without a middleman. It's like this sort of Patreon and Kickstarter replacement, where the features include like it's built inside the BTC Pay server. It's got real-time updates. It's got soft cap, hard cap goals, and now just I think announced today, it's got Lightning support. So I mean, this is no fees, and it's completely free, completely open source, right? So because it's part of BTC Pay server, which is open source and free, and allows it to be run on your own server with no third-party requirements. So I really think this is a powerful piece of technology. I really think this is a great addition to BTC Pay server, and I'd really like to see more funding go into this. They're only about halfway through their funding goal right now, but I think that this is going to be a pretty powerful technology, and I want to see what the panel thinks about this as well before we start getting into a little bit of the drama of accepting altcoins and things like that. But first, let's go with Richard first on this one. Then, Richard, I know you're not a developer, and nobody except for Justin and I are developers on here, but I wanted to see what you thought about this. Have you heard of BTC Pay server, and what do you think about this this crowdfunding platform addition to BTC Pay server?
I have heard of BTC Pay server. I know what it competes with. I know of Nicolas Dorier. All on-ramps are good on-ramps. And all things which enable new uses are essentially good uses. What makes Bitcoin an exponential technology is the fact that we are going to start to see things added to Lightning. Because Lightning and Bitcoin together are exponential technologies, which start to show people, as Gabriel might say, normies, people like me maybe, start to show people the uses for Bitcoin and the uses for Lightning. I got my first computer in 1982, probably before anybody else on this panel was born. And it was an IBM PC, 64K of RAM, 2 floppy disk drives. The first program I had was WordStar. I think the first spreadsheet was VisiCalc. VisiCalc started to make computers popular. The real app killer, the killer app at the time, was Lotus 1-2-3. And you started to see a massive spread of the use of desktop computers in the business world because of Lotus 1-2-3 and WordPerfect. These are really big deals. And I think that what amazes me is, look, I'm much older than you guys. You could probably be my kids. But I've seen all of this. I've seen it for 35 years. And this stuff happens really, really fast. And as people start to understand what can be done, it unfolds really, really fast. And I love seeing this stuff. I can't really comment specifically about BTC Pay Server because I don't know, but I know people use Kickstarter. I know people use crowdfunding. And so this starts to open the door, and it's a really big deal because of it. BTC Pay Server is a really big deal because it provides a platform for all of these other things to be developed. So BTC Pay Server is a kind of a scaling layer on Bitcoin, which I think is a really big deal. So I think we will continue to see, we'll see Lightning as a scaling layer. We'll see scaling layers built on top of Lightning. And this thing's going to happen really fast. I think overall it's a really big deal, and I think we'll see more of it. And I like it.
Yeah, so this is pretty much part of what we call the application layer, right, of Bitcoin. And I think this is really, really, really great. This is not even technically on Lightning, though it does have Lightning. So I guess you could say it is a part of the Lightning application layer, because I think that, again, Lightning is really going to be this interoperable application layer above Bitcoin that everybody can connect to and through. So this now this particular software now supports Lightning, so it could contribute to that. And I think that absolutely this could open the doors to all sorts of additional crowdfunding, because the big win here is not needing a third party. You'll be able to download this software for yourself, being completely free and open source. You can download and run it on your own server. So I think that's going to be really big. I want to hear what Justin thinks about this and his thoughts on this. What do you think, Justin? Is this this crowdfunding platform? What do you think about this? Is this going to sort of be the future of how Bitcoin is going to be able to help with the masses, get the masses in here by providing this type of utility that even the average person can understand?
Yeah, I like what I think it's Richard, right? What Richard just said about BTC Pay Server as a scaling layer. Like when you look at something like Patreon, the difficult thing is not the processing of payments. Can you hear me all right? Yes, it's not the processing of payments per se, or like the hiding of content behind a paywall or all that. It's more that they are like the one kind of sticky magnet that everybody who's interested in like a patronage-based business will kind of go to, right? And similar with like PayPal, right? It's sort of like one thing where everyone will go download that one thing, and everyone just goes there. And so I think that nowadays the actual applications themselves are probably pretty unlikely to be long-lived and revolutionary. But I think it's maybe true that something like the BTC Pay Server will be something that sort of like lends a little credibility, and if you recognize that UI, you trust it a little more, right? Just like you might with like a Stripe credit card form or something. And so like in that sense it would be scaling, but more from like the psychological layer where people will just be a little bit more willing to trust it as a brand, more so than like some sort of like a technical platform they know in any way. It's like this sort of like they're like application. It's like BTC Pay Server is more of an application framework than an application, right? And so I think it could be the case that that's starting to happen, right? That these sorts of, like maybe the Lightning wallets, some of the Lightning tooling is similar, where like you could get a layer of a degree of trust around that. So yeah, I think it's really unlikely that any one application will dominate at this early stage, but I think they all play a role. Like I had a student who built a Patreon equivalent as his final project, and it was really great. And so I think they're a great way to like experiment with all the contracting facilities that Bitcoin offers, and I think they do help, right? Especially in places where your people are cut off from the banking system completely, right? So yeah, that's kind of my point of view. I like the whole BTC Pay Server as sort of like a trust scaling layer.
Yeah, I like it. And there's other things like this, right? Like Tallycoin was kind of the first, at least public implementation that I'm aware of by DJ Booth about this, sort of to address this particular use case, this utility that people want to use Bitcoin for, which is this crowdfunding thing. And Tallycoin is pretty great, but I just love all of these services because they each have their own little pros and cons. Like Tallycoin is sort of I don't know if it's custodial, but you definitely have to go to Tallycoin's website. It's not something that you download and run your own, but it's really easy. You just go to Tallycoin, sign up, bam, you got yourself a crowdfund page right there, right? But this implementation with BTC Pay sort of takes that to the next level and allows you to run it on your own server. So I mean, all of these things have pros and cons, and all of these I think are great for Bitcoin, and I really would like to see more. I just want to share this quote too by the creator of this particular plugin for BTC Pay. I mean, he says he's quit his job in order to work on BTC Pay, and we'll hopefully keep it for as long as life permits, right? Like the donations that for this platform go a long way for this guy. And I think this is how it works. Like there's very few, there's much less open source developers, than you think there are, right? Like you see these amazing things like BTC Pay and you're like, oh man, there must be a team of hundreds of people working on this, right? To see this. And it's like, no, dude, there's one or two people, a few contributors that are working on these things, and they really need all the help they can get, because guess what? Altcoins, they're handing out money all over the place. Dash, BCH, they will hand you millions. They'll hand you millions of dollars to support their stuff. And it's really, really important that we support Bitcoin, because everything in Bitcoin is grassroots. So we got, guys, we really have to start supporting these projects more, giving more coin to these projects, because again, I know it's early and I know it's a small community, but those altcoins always have the wallets open to attract developers, and we have to make sure that we at least attempt to try to support and fund some of these open source developers that are working on Bitcoin projects as important, right, as BTC Pay. So definitely check out the links, guys. Definitely check that out below, and it's going to be really interesting to see, because some people are like, oh, it supports a few altcoins, so it's a fail. And it's like, whoa, guys, think about this, okay? These people are putting hours and hours, hundreds of hours into coding this for free, for open source, for the community. And then you say, oh, a couple altcoins are supported and now the whole project's a fail. Like, think about the myopicness. Think of how short-sighted that is. These guys are out here working every day on this project for free, for open source. And we just need to make sure that is recognized, that we understand, that we see that we recognize their work for what they're doing. And really the best way to do that is to donate to these platforms, or to donate to these campaigns that directly benefit these people that are working on this. And again, it's only one guy, guys, that has built this particular plugin. One single guy. So I think we can do a little bit better on donations with that. So I'm going to go with Gabriel next on this. Gabriel, what are your thoughts on this particular? I sort of went on the side rant there, but what are your thoughts on BTC Pay server? Even what are your thoughts on it adding altcoins, and what are your thoughts on using Bitcoin for these types of projects, crowdfunding in general?
I have a lot of thoughts, but Justin needs to go, so let's say goodbye to him.
Yes. Oh, I didn't see that. Sorry, Justin. Thanks, Justin. I'll let you say goodbye. Where can we find out more about you, sir?
Yeah, just justinmoon.com is the website. Biddle Bootcamp, BUIDL bootcamp.com. That's the class.
Awesome. Thanks so much for joining us, Justin. We really appreciate it, man. Have a good one. Yeah. And again, before this, Justin was already doing some other videos as well, streaming for Lightning. So definitely check out everything that Justin's doing. He's got a lot of content out there. Thanks, Justin.
Yeah.
All right, cool. All right, Gabriel, let's go with you, man. Let's go.
Oh man, that was so awesome to have Justin on. I just love to hear what developers have to say, and I love how he's like the whole geopolitical thing, because like, how could a guy like that putting together these courses? He's not going to have time, like Richard and I have, to read some articles about freaking the Russian central bank and stuff. Anyways, I do have a number of thoughts on this subject, and I'd like to start kind of with Bitcoin and then come to the application layer. So let's start at the base and go up. First of all, something that we've touched on a little bit in this episode, or in this panel discussion, is that Bitcoin is vying or attempting to become a money. It's totally not there yet. And this is a funny thing. Like, people are like, oh, it's such a bad money. And you're like, well, it's not money yet. It's the first digital commodity. It's totally a digital commodity. It's very volatile. People are betting on it. They're risking their wealth on the chance that it may someday become the best money that mankind has ever seen. And in my opinion, it has all the ingredients to become the best money that the world has ever seen. But in order to get there, it needs to be really big. It needs to be as big as other monies in the world, such as gold. And then it will have the qualities of those monies, which is giant liquidity, because it's worth a lot, and stability, because it's so big, it's very hard to push around with, different amounts of money going in and out of it. So until then, it's not going to be money. Then you'd want to build a currency layer. Lightning is meant to support the use of Bitcoin as a medium of exchange and as a unit of account as well. And as currency is generally a word that means something that's issued. Lightning is really not like that. It's not like an authority that's issuing script. that it promises to, back with something, or that it doesn't even promise. Like now we have this ridiculous currency, but it's totally a currency, the dollar. It's not money. I don't agree with that terminology, but it is a currency. It's something that they use the enforcement paradigm to force people to accept for debts. That's the legal tender laws. That's what makes the dollar a currency. Bitcoin will be used like we use currencies today, even though it's money. And the Lightning Network is an incredible invention. There are other ones. There will probably be other smart contract systems that will work alongside or in conjunction with Lightning to enable instant digital transactions that are trustworthy. We've already got it working now, really pretty well, and it's kind of in it's like in a solid beta phase right now, I would say. And people are really using it, and it's good enough to build things on and experiment with and throw a little bit of money back and forth and run some small scale e-commerce with, which is amazing. That's fantastic. The base layer isn't even money yet, and we have a functioning payments layer that's instant, as fast as email. Incredible. So now that we've got this amazing invention, we've been following it from the start, since that white paper dropped in 2015. And they've built it out over a couple years, and then they built out the applications layer over the one last year, where we've got functioning wallets, and we've got it integrated into these other systems, such as BTC Pay Server, which is basically it's almost like an accounting tool, right, for businesses, where you can run your own node and you can run your own system and keep track of your payments back and forth. And Nicolas Dorier integrated Lightning support into the BTC Pay Server, I believe it was about a year ago, maybe a little less. And that is incredible. And so now we have this situation where you can now easily integrate Lightning. Well, maybe not easily, but you can integrate Lightning into other things that were built on top of Bitcoin, so that your application or your infrastructure chunk can now support instant payments. So now we've got BTC Pay Server. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt, but it's still easy to use Lightning with BTC Pay, because BTC Pay has a one-click install. But I'll let you go.
I'm saying in general, it can be, it can take a good amount of work to integrate Lightning into any given Bitcoin application, let's say. But now that it's in BTC Pay Server, which is somewhat of a standard, server install for business, essentially, to keep track of payments. Now that Lightning is integrated there, now we can build actual applications that can be consumer facing. So it's basically a whole line from the most base, what's it called? Command line interface, super techie, have to be a total geek to use it at all, or even understand what's going on, which is where Bitcoin started, right? It was command line only. That's how all open source, nearly all open source projects start like that. Then they build layer, and finally you get to the place where normies can go on their phone or go on a website and easily, with a great UX, totally not confusing, use something simply, and it's perfect every time. That's there's a lot of steps to get there. And we're now getting to that spot. We're just finally reaching up to that cliff, to the top of that cliff with these, we're clawing our way up. And it's just amazing to see that. So that's my preamble. And as far as crowdfunding, I think it's really awesome that Bitcoin separates out the payments layer onto an open source place, like we've done with, say, servers with Linux and Apache as an open source web server standardized for the industry. We've got WordPress, which is a standardized, it's actually, it is open source, even though they have a company there. The WordPress code is open source and free for anybody to use and install as, as like a CMS. And there's a bunch of other open source CMSs out there. Bitcoin is open source money. And so we're basically, software is eating the world, and open source software is eating the world. And we're separating out all these functions into open source distributed networks in order to move toward the future. So Justin was talking about Patreon, totally centralized service, custodial. They hold all the fiat themselves. They have the escrow service. They're also doing they're judging the projects, with human beings, reading, and they're saying, okay, well now, you violate our terms of service because we're going to get cracked down on. And that's completely centralized. Now we have a situation where Bitcoin is, by decentralizing the payments layer and creating open source alternative for individuals and institutions or businesses, let's say. Now it's really making it clear that, okay, what we consider a crowdfunding platform like Kickstarter is actually performing a multitude of functions. They've got a web server, right, that's centralized. They've got a payments infrastructure that's custodial, that's centralized. They've got an escrow service where they're holding on to that in trust. And they're saying, well, we think that you guys scammed all those people, so we're actually going to give that money back. These are all interesting functions that can also be decentralized over time. Usually anything contract-based is going to be built on top of Bitcoin because the contracts have to do with people wanting money or people holding money, and all the contracts need to be able to control the money, and therefore they have to be built directly with multi-signature contracts as transactions on top of Bitcoin. But this is infrastructure that's going to be used to decentralize. And so what we see here are this is like a completely raw version of crowdfunding where you have no protection, right? It's a much higher risk for the investors, right? They're going to be like, okay, well, I'm giving you this money, and just like these ICOs, we're giving you our money, and either you're going to like steal it and run away and not do anything, or do an exit scam, or you're going to actually make something cool and we'll make something money back. It's much higher risk. There's a lot more trust involved on that side, but meanwhile, it's making it really clear that what the different functions are in each of these projects. So I think that's a wonderful thing. And as we go forward, we're going to be able to build more and more and more decentralized parts. And it's going to be great to see crowdfunding, that is made out of like DAOs, where there's going to be an escrow DAO. There's going to be a project vetting DAO, where there's going to be thousands and thousands of people maybe voting on whether these people are legit, you know what I mean? And it's going to be really fun to see this whole beginning of barely decentralization, or just in the sense that there's an internet and anybody can go throw money at it, to truly decentralized from the ground up. And it's going to happen over decades. I can't wait.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see. I mean, this is just great points, Gabriel, where you're talking about decentralizing all the parts, right? Piece by piece by piece by piece, people. This is what Bitcoin is going to do. This is what the incentive is to do with Bitcoin, is to replace the old centralized counterparts with piece by piece by piece, and it's going to take time. People look at they might look at the crowdfunding and Bitcoin platform right now and look at it and be like, well, that's nothing. There's huge risk. This is not what we need. Just give that a couple of years and see what happens, right? It's going to change the world. So I think it's really important to, like you say, Gabriel, to remind people that this is going to take time, but this is going to happen piece by piece by piece, and I think this represents another piece, which is that crowdfunding piece. But it's just amazing when you think about it, like you said, Gabriel, all the moving parts of a standard Kickstarter operation type of company. I mean, between escrow and managing, and giving people money back for refund, all that stuff, research into the project itself. So yeah, it over time, I think that can be split up into all these little DAOs, and that would be absolutely fantastic to see. I mean, just like software is going to eat the world, right? Well, maybe DAOs will eat the corporations, and that's the hope. So did you have a final point on that, Gabriel?
Yeah, I agree. And I think DAOs, I think that private enterprise will always be able to move faster, but then eventually the DAOs will catch up, and people will be like, oh, it's just a lot easier, or it's just a lot more trustworthy to use, Bitcoin. As Bitcoin's the first real DAO, in my opinion. Maybe you could say TCP/IP, but really more Bitcoin. And yeah, I think that maybe there will always be a place for a private enterprise because you'll be able to move so quickly. But yeah, DAOs are going to begin eating a lot of traditional corporate areas. I believe this century for sure.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, let's go with Mr. Richard himself, Bitcoin Tina here. Richard, what are your thoughts on the discussion so far and on this crowdfunding platform? Go ahead.
I first have to apologize. I was not laughing at anything that Gabriel was saying. I have to comment. I was texting with Justin, and he tells me that he always thought Bitcoin Tina was a woman. So I was really in stitches. So I'm really sorry.
There is no alternative. That's what it stands for.
There is no
people.
alternative. Bitcoin Tina is not a woman. There is no alternative to Bitcoin. Is the point of the name. So I'm sorry. I agree with what Gabriel was saying. I totally agree. I was thinking myself that there are real trust issues with raising money like this. You're going to potentially have a lot of scammers. And the question is, how do you look if you have something where people are using a service over and over again, you can have reputation scores. We see that with Uber. We see that with other services. And reputation scores are actually really meaningful. In a lot of ways, people trust reputation scores and comments on reputation and all the stuff that goes into that far more than they trust anything else. That's the world we live in today. It's really interesting. If somebody's brand new and they want to raise money for an idea, how do you prove your reputation? How do you prove that you're honest and that somebody should give you money? In some senses, we already have that problem. We have stories. I'm trying to remember. There was a story recently about they raised money for a homeless guy. This couple raised money for a home. I can't remember the exact story.
Yeah. There's a couple that raised money that said they were raising money for the homeless guy, and then they stole nearly all of it.
Right. But the homeless guy, I think, was in on it also. The whole thing was a scam. So it's a real issue and a real problem. And I don't have a good answer. The interesting thing that I keep coming back to generally is that I think there are a lot of people out there who are really smart. There are a lot of people out there who have really good imaginations and creativity. And I think we're going to see solutions to problems on all sorts of levels that are going to amaze and shock people. And the thing that I'm continually amazed about is how little imagination some people have who look at things like Bitcoin and have no imagination to understand what can happen. And again, I go back to the fact that I've tended to be an early mainstream adopter in a lot of things. I was early mainstream adopter. I bought a domain name for myself well before most other people bought domain names. I was using on the internet back then, it was AOL. I started with that and then was early adopter on the internet. I got broadband early. My first flip phone was not the earliest it could be, but it was 1992. I tended to be an early.
Wait a second here. 92, that's really early. See, I have you beat on the computer, though. I wanted to say that. This is very important for me to set into stone here. 1981, we got a VIC-20, Commodore VIC-20. It only had 5K of RAM, and we had a cassette tape to play games off of.
Yes,
but and then
you were 4 years old.
I really appreciate you saying that, my friend. I think I'm a lot older than I look, maybe. And then we had I didn't get a phone until later, but that was on purpose. But I had internet in 95, and we got cable modem in 98. I happened to live in a neighborhood in LA where I was able to get that, but there were no servers that kicked out more than 25K a second.
I was early on almost everything, and the really early guys when it came to computers were actually the guys who were on, I think it was Apple II, which came out in 77. I was never at that level of user adoption.
Yeah, we had an Apple II. Yeah, we got an Apple II in 83.
Before that, on computers, actually people built computers out of things like Heathkit, which I'm sure probably nobody watching this has ever heard of. But you've heard of it. Right, Gabriel?
Yeah. Yeah, that's in the mid 70s. That was the classic kit that all the guys had, and that was what all the guys in Wozniak and those guys were messing around with the garage, and they thought, well, we can like, there's a demand for this. We can build it for them or whatever.
I was never at that level. I was never at that level. No. I'm still not at that level of user. But
no, I don't like it. Once it gets to soldering, I leave it to Vortex. I'm sure he likes soldering.
I'm sure Vortex was doing stuff when he was a little kid. But
yeah. Well, I did get kicked off AOL for stealing people's usernames, stealing people's usernames and selling them. But I was only like 16 years old, so like my mom was pretty upset. But there was nothing they could do to me.
Yes. Oh, we were doing hacker stuff in the 80s for sure when I was a little kid, man. Ooh, yeah. That was how I learned about all this stuff, and it was like, it's like Assange, right? Like I didn't continue into the 90s. I was writing classical music at that time, but when Assange was with the cypherpunks and everything, if I had continued on, I would have probably been into Bitcoin a lot earlier. But if I had been continued hacking things after the mid 80s.
Yeah.
So
I'm just sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's okay. I think that to go back to your original question, I think that I'm not sure if how much money people can or can't raise. And I don't know how it will end up working out. I think those are certainly real issues. Everything comes with a cost. Nothing is free. There's no such thing as a free lunch. Everything has some kind of a cost. And we have an issue today where people are being kicked off of sites like Patreon. We have credit card companies putting pressure on companies like Patreon. So we
deplatforming.
Thank you. And so to avoid the deplatforming problems, we're going to have some scammers and some people who are doing things which are crooked. And I don't know the answer, but there are people out there who are a lot smarter than me who may come up with good answers.
Yeah, I don't think there's a problem. I don't think there's. I got to take issue with your framing of the situation of reputation as a problem in any way. If you don't have a reputation, you're not going to be able to get people's trust. That's how the world works. That's how it should work, and I think it's great. And we'll make digital tools to increase the accuracy and speed of reputation creation, dissemination, proliferation. That will be improved, but I don't believe that there is a problem there. I mean, I think Sybil attacks on existing reputation systems are a problem that needs to be addressed, and that will be addressed. But you know, I don't think not having a reputation or being a beginner is a problem.
No, what I mean is, I don't know how reputation would have solved the problem for those scammers with homeless guy raising money. I don't know how that would have stopped that. I'm not sure. I don't answer.
Well, it's a prevent. It's like an attempt to prevent, not an attempt to, you know, like after the fact, right? So it's preventative. So, but you know,
right.
and we don't want to go too down far the rabbit hole of this, but I think that, you know, like, I think we all agree here this is a good start, and we definitely agree that some of these problems, you know, could be $1 million or more companies, right? So this is something that we want to remind people of, that these are ideas that you can take and make DAOs and make things that solutions to these problems, because this is at the very beginning. We're at the very beginning now, but this I think is a great push forward. BTC Pay Server itself is a great push forward for the Bitcoin ecosystem, and this crowdfunding platform that's now built into BTC Pay Server I think is really really great as well. So I just wanted to get that across. I want to give a few shout outs too to some people that, you know, that are helping to support BTC Pay Server. We have Nick Carter out there. His FUD dice that he's selling right now is really, really great. He's donating all the proceeds to the BTC Pay Server tip jar from that. So definitely check that out. Of course, guys, the links are in the show notes. And then shout out to Max from Hodl Hodl. Those guys are great over there. They're going to be accepting tickets for Honey Badger this year via BTC Pay Server. So that is really, really great. They're going to give that a shot. Really excited. Thank you so much for that, Max. The Hodl Hodl.
Is it in Riga again?
Yeah. And the Hodl conference was in Riga last year. It was great. This year is going to be the same. I believe it's going to be amazing. So shout out to Max. Thank you so much for that. And in addition to that, Max didn't even stop there. Max is also going to be running a fundraising campaign during the Honey Badger conference for BTC Pay Server. So they're going to use it to accept donations, or use it to accept ticket sales, and they're going to be running a donation campaign for the software. So thanks again so much for that, Max. That is really awesome. Again, just shows how awesome Hodl Hodl the company is. Shows how awesome their conference is, the Honey Badger conference. So make sure you guys check that out, because that is going to be awesome. It was great last year. And then final shout out to QuinSolo, the store, quinsolo.com. Of course, guys, the links are in the show notes. They're donating all their profits from a specific product, the BTC Pay Server coaster. They're donating all the profits from that particular product to BTC Pay Server. So definitely check that out. Go to that store, start buying some BTC Pay Server coasters, and because all the proceeds goes to BTC Pay Server for that. So really great shout outs to those guys. Thank you guys so much for that. I think we can go one final round of final thoughts, and then we can end it. So Gabriel, final thoughts on the show today. Again, thanks so much for joining us, man. We really, really appreciate it. Final thoughts today, and where can we find out more about you?
Well, definitely find me on Twitter at Gabriel D. Vine, letter D. You know, it's a really interesting time. We're now like just fantastic for everybody that's actually doing things in the space, because all the noise around, you know, the price in a lot of newbies and distracting from some of the hard work that needs to get done. And like the ecosystem of developers and businesses is really exploding. I mean, the price did, you know, from the last bear market. So, you know, there is a lot more capital in space and people in space and talking in the space. And I really feel like the sort of shakeout altcoins too as well. Kind of there was so much despair, and all these people that were in it for the wrong reasons are getting flushed out, and it's just the wonderful bear market where the message is like stronger than ever. The threats to Bitcoin that were sided with the bull market, ironically, is the Bcash hard fork. Their failure has been so spectacular and so obvious, and also have been saying.
Sorry,
right now.
Sorry, Gabriel, you're breaking up too much, man. You're breaking up way too much.
Oh, no.
Just the past few seconds.
Okay.
So we'll go final thoughts to Richard. You were going good, but then the past 60 seconds, 30 seconds, it was just too bad. Let's go with Richard. Final thoughts. See if you can fix that real quick, Gabriel. But, hey, the whole show is great. Just these last few seconds. But Richard, let's go with your final thoughts and where we can find out more about you.
Okay. First, I want to thank you for having me on your show. I really appreciate that. I am on Twitter, Bitcoin Tina. I'm at Bitcoin Tina on Twitter. I'm actually extraordinarily bullish on Bitcoin. I may be one of the most bullish people in the space. I think that it will not only become the one and only global money. I think it will happen in 15 to 30 years at the max. Things are going to happen much faster than most people believe. And maybe because I'm much older than most of the people in the space, I've seen how fast things happen. And you're building on top of already existing infrastructure. So we've gone after period after period after period of creating infrastructure and then building on top of it. So you couldn't really have an internet until you had in place enough computers to use an internet. So you wouldn't have been able to have a broadband internet in 1985. 1985 when you had a 2 or 386 PC at the time, because you didn't have enough speed. We were not set up for that. We just couldn't have had it. Today, we're building Bitcoin and then building Lightning in a world where most people have smartphones. Most people have computers in one form or another. Most people have access to pretty fast internet if they don't have very fast internet. There are many people out there who have cable modems. There are many people out there who have fiber to the home. There are people out there who have slower internet, but the technology that we're building on is already in place, and this is a big deal. You've got 5G, which is getting rolled out. And so I don't think there's an understanding of how fast this is going to take place. And once people start to see applications that they can use that they're interested in, this is going to happen really fast. Because once people are able to make something real for themselves in their lives, they want an ability to do it. And this is, I think, very underestimated. So I've seen this happen over and over and over again. And I think people are vastly under. Bitcoin at $3,500 is insanely stupid. It's an insanely stupid price. Bitcoin at, Dan Held says Bitcoin under $1 million is cheap. I kind of agree with him. People would think that's crazy. But the point of fact, this thing is going to grow incredibly large, incredibly fast. And in my opinion, you're going to have people who are going to wind up as no coiners. You're going to have people who wind up not having anywhere near as much as they think they're going to happen, because all it is going to take is a few sparks to happen. I don't know if the Russians are going to invest $10 billion in Bitcoin, but you don't have to have that many wealthy people start putting money into Bitcoin to have this price move pretty dramatically. And people are going to get caught very, very off guard very fast. We could have a week where Bitcoin goes up $10,000 in a week. And people say, oh, no, you can't possibly have that happen. Yeah, you actually can. It could absolutely happen, because you're going to have people who are very much caught off guard. And this stuff's going to happen really, really fast. And we're laying the groundwork for it. And the development of Lightning and its associated laps and dApps and the other things like Bitcoin Pay Server, like these other things that are going to develop, this is all happening now. in the next 1, 2, 3 years, we are going to see a Cambrian explosion of applications on Lightning. And once people wake up to this, once Wall Street wakes up to this, people, I don't really care if Wall Street does it or not, but there are smart guys out there. There are smart guys who've seen exactly what I've seen over the last 30 some odd years. And they don't understand what Bitcoin is. But when you start showing them things that can be done and applications, and their eyes pop up and, wait a minute, I didn't know you could do that. Wow. You're going to disintermediate this business, that business, and the other business? How much money are you going to kill them with? This is huge. And people don't begin to understand this because there's not enough information out there. I spend most of my time looking at this stuff, and people don't understand what's happening. They don't understand how meaningful this is. They don't understand applications that are being built right now. I keep watching YouTube. I'm watching the YouTube from Chain Code Labs. 97 people watch the YouTube. Nobody knows what's going on. This is staggering, and it's going to happen really fast. Just as a brief shout out, I asked Elizabeth Stark, I said, there should be a conference for Lightning. Lightning Network should have a special conference showing not just what Lightning Network can do, but apps and labs that are being developed for Lightning. If you had a conference like that and the media started to wake up and the world started to wake up, their eyes will pop open and say, oh, I didn't know you could do that. It's staggering. People have no idea. They're completely clueless.
And of course, we try to, you know, that's what this channel, the channels like this is for and things like that to help people along and stuff. But of course, we've been saying that this, of course, will be the world's largest wealth transfer in history. And, you know, each one is bigger than the last, you know, with the railroads and then the circuits, you know, silicon. This one is going to be, you know, the internet. This one's going to be the biggest one yet. And we're going to keep trying to warn people and let people know. Because remember, the iPhone, right? That was only in 2008, 10 years ago. And then all of a sudden, every single person on the planet has one. You know, we saw BTC go from $7,500 to $20,000 in 2 weeks. Now, granted, that was retail, you know, mostly retail driven and stuff. And so that's why it was kind of, it was at the very end of the parabolic blow off, but still that's how fast things can actually happen. Because, you know, we waited years and years to go for a couple grand. And then we went to, you know, more than over $10,000 in 2 weeks. So it actually absolutely can happen. It's just a matter of time. You know, these market cycles tend to repeat. And so, but each time, of course, falling only to the previous high. So we just keep going up and up and up and up over time. And I think that that's going to be the same thing here. So, you know, I'm looking, of course, for that 200-day moving average to be broken sometime around summer or fall. And that's when, of course, we begin the next bull run once we break that 200-day moving average. And the Lightning Network conference, that's just an awesome idea. We definitely, absolutely, definitely need a Lightning Network conference. We have to all everybody DM Elizabeth Stark. No, she's pretty busy. We don't want to bother her, but definitely, guys, we got to get something like this going. A Lightning Network conference, I think, is absolutely needed, especially in 2019. Absolutely in 2019. Maybe not last year, but for sure sometime this year, because there is absolutely huge amount of development on the Lightning Network, both on the protocol itself and for applications that people are using it for. So I think with that, guys, we can close. I really, really appreciate everybody's thoughts. Really appreciate everybody on the show. Again, guys, of course, we don't get paid, right? So this is all voluntary. So I really thank all the guests every time. Thank you guys so much for your time. And of course, thank you guys so much in the chat. We had a great conversation there. A lot of people talking in there. And if you guys missed the show, you know, join us in the comments. We do the show every Sunday. So we really appreciate everybody coming out. We got a lot more shows, guys. And of course, definitely check out Tone's conference in Las Vegas, guys. It's coming in only a couple of weeks. It's going to be great. There's going to be a poker tournament, a carnivore dinner. So I'm really, really looking forward to that, to talking Bitcoin with Bitcoiners. So thanks again, guys, so much for joining me. Really, really appreciate it. Until next time, guys, keep talking Bitcoin. We'll see you later.
Keep talking Bitcoin.
Keep talking Bitcoin. See you guys later.